Who am I and what family I come from? I'm Thomas Everett Loser, and I come from the family of Everett A. Loser and Lula E. Loser. And Lula was a Thomas before she married my dad. And I had three sisters older than me, and I had a brother younger than me. So there was five of us kids in the family. And I had a grandpa and grandma Loser that lived down in Eaton, Ohio. And beyond them, I didn't know. I had an Uncle Paul and an Uncle Russ and Uncle Harold. Uncle Russ and Uncle Paul lived down in Eaton, Ohio, and Uncle Russ lived in Wheeling, Indiana. And my dad also had a sister who was out in Colorado, Greeley, Colorado. Her name was Alice Yoder and was married to George Yoder. And on my mom's side, I have to think about how many brothers and sisters. There was Uncle Clifton, Uncle Cecil, Aunt Virgie, Aunt Valita, Aunt Alice, Aunt Patsy, a mother in that family. And I can remember some of the elders, even of that family. Uncle Art was my mom's grandma, or my mother's grandma, or excuse me again, it would have been my mom's uncle was Art Thomas, and there was about three or four of them brothers, and they were all pretty rough guys. They laid blocks. A lot of them drank hard and fought hard and lived pretty tough lives. You know, they pretty tough lives. And I kind of went from there. We lived in Muncie, and I was born on 12th Street in Muncie, Indiana. And we moved from there out to Gaston, Indiana, and lived at my Aunt Virgie's for a little while. And we moved over to Eaton in an old house out there that the grass was taller than us kids. And so we all pushed this old push mower and stuff to get the yard mowed. And we lived over there for 5 years. And I went to Eaton School, and good place kind of growing up as a kid. There was a lot of woods around us and like I say, out in the country. And we lived over there till I think I was in the fourth grade. My dad had built a house, bought a lot over there by Gaston, and he built this house. And so we moved over there. And when we moved there, I know I was short enough, I had to stand on the baseboard to look out the windows. And anyway, we lived there for a few years. And my oldest sister, Barbara, she got married to Bobby DeWeese. And at that time, my dad decided to get a divorce, my mom and my dad. And my mom couldn't drive, and she got a job at a dime store in Muncie. She had to bum rides back and forth in there. And my dad moved, always within 20 miles of where I lived, but he never did spend much time with me, you know. And I kind of grew up there pretty free, doing what I wanted to. My mom was always very encouraging to me. Anytime I built something or done something, she always acted real interested. And I raised rabbits and pigeons and chickens and trapped and hunted. I never played much ball. I tried it a few times, but I warmed the bench so much that I just, it really wasn't in me. I couldn't warm up fast enough, so I liked to hunt and trap and stuff like that. And so I didn't get too much into the sports. And I worked a lot when I was a kid for a farmer, Farrell DeWeese, and that was good for me. I'd go through town, all the boys going swimming, and I'm working. So when you're a kid, you thought that's kind of bad, but really I look back on it, kept me out of a lot of trouble and taught me some things, too, about working and the value of working and trying to be a good, honest person. And so from there, I graduated from Gaston High School. There was 27 in my class that graduated. There was 17 boys and 10 girls. This is kind of what my childhood was like. I was born in Muncie, like I said, and lived in there on 12th Street in Muncie for a couple of 3 years. And then we moved to Gaston, lived in Aunt Virgie's upstairs for a year or so. And for some reason, I don't know why, but when I was a kid, Ronnie had a birthday, and I think he was 1, and must have been about 3. I put salt in his cake. I don't know. I was mean. I'd done it for meanness, and I really don't know why. I've looked at it and tried to think about it. But anyway, I went over to Eaton for the first 3 years, and there used to be an old glass factory down behind the school, and we'd dig for this old glass back in that schoolyard, and they had big hunks of glass. We thought it was treasures. And I had a friend over there. His name was George Wright, and his family raised birds and stuff. And at dinner time once in a while, we'd go down to his house, and he had these big walk-in cages where we'd see these birds. But then we moved from over at Eaton. I had a pretty good childhood there. There was the woods all around, and I could play outside a lot. And us kids played out all the time. Got hurt a couple times like normal. I fell on a barbed wire fence one time, and I cut my leg pretty bad. And one time my dad had this flying squirrel. We had several of them over at that old place that would come from the woods behind the house and go across the road to another woods. And he caught this one in a cabinet. And I had it in a jar, and I took it to school and showed it to everybody and brought it home. And why, I have no idea to this day, but I took it down to this little creek there beside the house, a culvert, had water in it. And I drowned him in that jar and throwed him out. So I've always wondered why I'd done that and thought how dumb it was. But anyway, we had chickens over there. We had a mean rooster over there. And we had these pigs, and they was constantly out. So the old man put electric wire around their pen, and with a little dog got in that electric wire, and it killed the dog. So I don't know where he had it hooked up to 110 or what. But but anyway, we lived there and stuff, and then we went over to Eaton, or to Gaston, moved over there, and across the road there was a little woods lot, and a guy owned it. Porter Rigdon owned it, and I don't know where he gave it to him or sold it to the Lions Club, and then it become a fairgrounds and a park, and from then on it's still a kind of the Gaston Fairgrounds. But my childhood there at Gaston, for quite a while, it wasn't too bad. My dad left, and it kind of made me feel like I was awful responsible for my age.
How old is that?
I was about 11 or 12 when he left. And, I tried to do things, raise the garden and everything. We didn't have enough fuel to burn most of the time. We had an old coal stove. Excuse me. And many, many times we didn't have enough coal to burn, so we dragged from the woods a piece of wood or whatever, and I'd dig around the snow trying to get to the coal. But we didn't die. We kept alive. And my mom, she tried her best to keep going. But my dad never would pay his support on time, and I think when we finally all grew up, he still owed several thousands of dollars, but my mom never did try to collect that. But anyway, when I was a kid, if somebody tried to bring us welfare or a basket of groceries or something, we'd about run them off because we had a lot of pride and we didn't want nobody, giving us welfare and stuff. So maybe I look back now, maybe it's kind of dumb. We probably should have took it and stuff. But, that's the way it was back then. That's the way our feelings were. And
did your mom work?
My mom worked. She had to bum rides. She couldn't even drive. She didn't have a license or nothing when the old man left. And she worked at a dime store in Muncie, which was about 12, 15 miles from there. And she bum rides back and forth to work. And I think she made 65 cents an hour at that time. And my aunt would give her rides part of the time, and this other lady give her rides part of the time. And finally, my mom took driver's lessons and learned how to drive and got an old car. and we had plumbing in her house. We had this place over at Eaton. We didn't have the inside plumbing. We had a pump and outhouse and things. And here at Gaston, we had a bathroom and a pump and all that, but half the time it didn't work. And many times I wished we just had the old outhouse and the pump because, it was simple enough. It might have been harder work, but it was simple. And if you didn't have no money, you couldn't get them fixed. Where the old stuff, you just used it. But I was always pretty inquisitive, and I always liked raising things. I like to garden. I like birds. I like chickens and pigeons and all that stuff, and raised a pig or two. I got to say that I had a pretty good childhood, but I had some times that were pretty down. I mean, really depressed, and no money, no way to go. And so a lot of times I sat around and made up my mind then that when I grew up, I was going to do my best to work. And I always felt like if you didn't have any money, you might live in a free country, but you wasn't very free if you didn't have a little money. So I took a lot of jobs, shoveled sheep manure and hog manure and everything you could think of. If I got a chance to do it, I'd done it. And and I'd done some things I shouldn't have done. I was in trouble a little bit. One time I got caught for stealing gas, me and a couple other guys, and I wound up getting 6 months probation. And I served my probation. I went in every week or whatever it was and signed up. Got off of it and went back to court to get off of it, get cleared of it. And the stupid judge didn't even know why I was there, so he said, well, I got to fine you $16, for the least I could do. Well, I was there to get off of it, and I, supposedly had a good discharge or whatever you call it. But anyway, Bill Terhune was there, and he wouldn't even loan me the $16 to get out of there. And but I finally got out and got away from it and stuff, and I've learned lessons by it, and hopefully some of them stuck with me. And my childhood, when Jim and I used to go catch pigeons a lot of times, we'd climb up in them old barns at night catching pigeons, and done a lot of things that a lot of kids probably thought was stupid, but I got through it. And like I say, me and my brother, we used to go out to the dump out west of Gaston and pick through the junk. And one time he found $7 in a box. We made him split it with us. So I'll tell you, but we'd haul junk home. I had a bunch of old radios and stuff I'd work on. I'd take them apart, and I never did fix many of them, but I always tried to take them apart and see how they worked and things. And
when did you start fishing and hunting?
I started fishing when I was a little bitty kid. My dad and mom at that time would go to the lakes in the summer, and we'd stay a week up at the lake. And, little kids, we'd fish off them piers and stuff then. I was crazy about it then. But my dad never would take me fishing till one time. The only time I really remember him taking me fishing was there was a place in northern Indiana. He used to go and cast for bass a lot. It was called Pit Lake. And he had a couple old bachelors lived up there. Shorty and Glenn lived on Long Lake up there by it. And he took me out of school one day to go up there fishing with him. And I think the only reason he did, because he asked me then, and I was just a little kid, 11 years old, I reckon, who I'd want to live with if him and my mom split up. And like I say, I spoke up and I said, I reckon I'd have to stay with my mom because she'd probably need some help, if he wasn't around there. And so anyway, I got unexcused absence for being out of school that day. That's the only one I ever remembered getting, and I got an unexcused for that. But that's the only time I really went fishing with him, up something like that. But I went fishing the river a lot and some of the gravel pits around home, any chance I got. And we caught a lot of night crawlers to fish with. And I used them horseweed worms and, everything like that. And hunting, Grandpa Thomas was the one that really kind of got me started squirrel hunting. And, it just went on from there, deer hunting and squirrel hunting and rabbit hunting and the whole works. And I've always liked the hunting and the fishing. And I guess you wasn't competing with a bunch of other people. You was kind of competing with yourself a lot. And we ate it. We ate all the squirrels and rabbits and quail or anything I got. We'd eat them. I wouldn't even shoot them quail when I was a kid a lot of times because they were so little and a shotgun shell cost so much. And I figured it was a waste. But I survived it and look back on it. And there was a lot of good times. And I still like to fish a lot. And I like to hunt a lot. And I've got my sons and my grandsons, they're getting into it some. And Tommy's a good fisherman, a good hunter. And and I worked a lot. I always tried to start out, and I went in Delco for a while. But a little bit more about my family. My brother was, he's a pretty wild kid, and he liked to party and things. Well, he got killed when he was 30 years old. He was down in Florida, and he got electrocuted. And I've never had an acceptance of the way it happened. I've always had some other feelings. I knew the guys that was involved there and things. And I've always had doubts that it happened like some of them said. My sisters, they were all, two of them, local. Excuse me. And, we lived a pretty normal life. They got married a couple of times, divorced a couple of times, and raised a bunch of kids. And the two middle siblings are passed away now. And I've still got Barbara, my oldest sibling, and me. That's all that's left. And as far as rest of the family, I was close at times with Cecil Ray Thomas, and cousin Jimmy Loester from Eaton, Ohio. But he grew up, we kind of grew apart. But Jimmy got drowned down in South Carolina. He was with some Boy Scouts and stuff. He drowned. So really, Bill Loester was my age. I was Uncle Harold's boy, and he had Uncle Harold had Floyd and Bill and Jacqueline. Well, Jacqueline got killed when she was about 19 in a car wreck. And Bill, he's up in North Carolina now. Had a good job, worked for the government a lot. Him and I was pretty close when we were younger and run around some. Floyd is a couple years younger than me, and pretty much to himself. I see Floyd once in a while. We get along good and have a good conversation when we see each other, but he just pretty much stays home. And so rest of the family on mother's side, I had some cousins, Larry and Nancy. Larry was a little older than me, and he was an only child, and I used to go in there to his house and stay with him some. And he had all kind of toys, had all funny books, all the toys he wanted and stuff, but, they were really selfish with him, and he'd use them to try to get you to do things. But anyway, I bought a bicycle off of him one time. I think I gave him $11 for it, and I bought it on time from him. And family-wise, can't really say a whole lot more other than when I got married. I married Karen Southard, and we had two boys, and we raised them mostly around Gaston. We had them out in Oregon a time or two, but mostly we lived there right around Gaston and got the boys raised. And they went to school at Westdale in Gaston and graduated. And I forgot to tell you, I started school in Eaton, Indiana, and went to the first 3 grades in Eaton. And then I went to Gaston and started in the 4th grade. I had a friend, though, in the 4th grade, Jim Jackson. And Jim and I had been buddies ever since. And he passed away this last spring in 24. Yeah, and him and I went to Alaska a couple times, rode our motorcycles up there and back, and went up there hunting and things. done a lot of things we shouldn't have done, and but I've had a pretty good life up to now. And I'll tell you about my work life. If I go all the way back, it's pretty long. I started out when I was a kid. Mainly, I worked for Farrell DeWeese farming. I started for him when I was about 13, and I even worked for him after I was grown, married, and working in the factories. I still worked for him some part-time. But Farrell trusted me a lot, and he just turned me loose with a tractor and equipment, and I'd take it home in the evening. We farmed several different places, so I'd finish up a place. I'd just take equipment home with me at night, and next morning go to where I had to go and work and stuff. But I got old enough that farming, you never knew whether it was going to rain, whether you was going to have to work, whether you're going to be off. And the factories and things looked tempting to me because you worked so many hours and you're off. And so I started out, though, I graduated from high school when I was 17. And you really can't get a good job till you're 18. So in the meantime, I got a job at a filling station there in Muncie, pumping gas. And I worked that for a while, but I also got a chauffeur's license, and I drove a dump truck for Henry Knott's for a while. And I hauled fill sand and gravel into Southside High School and the student center out there at Ball State. That's when I was working there. Then I went to Durham Manufacturing. They made card chairs and tables and step stools and things of that nature. And I worked there for a year or so. And then I can't remember where I got laid off there. I went to Duffy's Manufacturing, and I worked there for quite a while. And me and Karen got married while I was working at Duffy's. And I think I was making $1 an hour, $1.25 an hour at the most, but I was putting in a lot of hours. And so worked there for a while. And like I say, I still farmed some. And I went to, finally got on at Delco Battery. And I worked there for 5 years. And I got laid off one time. So Karen and I and Tommy went to Washington State and thought I really wanted to be out there. So we stayed about 6 weeks, and I come back to Indiana and Delco. My mom told me, said, well, they was getting ready to call me back at Delco. Well, they never. I come back, and I had to go to work for Gene Benedum for the summer, and I finally got called back at Delco and worked there another, well, till I think it was 1967. And Ed Hensley, my oldest sister's ex-husband, was out in Oregon. And he offered me an opportunity if I wanted to come out there and work for him, I could. So he'd bought some property and was going to develop it and all this. Ed was a big high roller. So we sold out and went out there. At that time, we had Calvin and Tommy both. And we stayed out there for about, a year and a half. And I worked for Ed for a while, and he kind of run out of money. So in the meantime, I worked for some logging outfits. Well, first off, I worked for a construction outfit up in Portland. Rode back and forth from Salem to Portland with this guy in Salem. And I lived about 25 miles east of Salem in a little town up there of South Bend, no, it wasn't South Bend. It was Mahaman Lyons is where we lived. Anyway, I worked at construction. Then I went to work logging. I logged for a couple guys, and I got a job in the plywood mill. I went to work there, and it was real fast work, and it was an afternoon job. So I went to work, and I worked till supper time, and I come home, and I told Karen, I said, I'm quitting. I said, I didn't come out here to work nights or work in a factory. So I didn't go back. And she was pretty upset and worried, and I understand that. But I went to work then at the Forest Service. I'm thinking I was fighting fires. Went to work on the fires for a couple weeks. And then I went to work on the Forest Service planting trees after that and working this kind of part-time work. And I worked for them that fall, and I got laid off. And we come back to Indiana on the train. And then we went back out there, and I went back to work for the Forest Service, and they put me on full time. And I was working in the as a wilderness ranger up at Mount Jefferson. And I'd done that for the summer. And after that summer, they put me on full time on engineering and done a lot of road work and surveying work and cruising timber and things like that. They loaned me to timber management, and that's when I done the timber cruising. But they also, in engineering where I was at, we was doing through cuts on roads, and it kind of scared me because I didn't have much math as far as algebra and trig and stuff. That's really pretty simple stuff, figuring them through cuts. But at the time it wasn't, to me. And I had some golden opportunities, had some real good guys that was kind of sponsoring me and behind me and everything. And they got me into JC's, the Chamber of Commerce and stuff up there. Well, I was pretty selfish, and I worked in the woods. Well, I'd find a good fishing spot or hunting spot. So on the weekends when I was off, I wanted to go back up there and fish and hunt. Well, Karen wanted to go to town, and I wasn't very accommodating because she didn't have much family out there or nothing. And her brother come out and stayed with us, Don, which I don't think it helped us any. But anyway, so I decided we'd come back to Indiana, and we did. And I was here for... we got here in like November, December, and Christmas was coming up. I had the opportunity to go to Westinghouse or Warner Gear. My cousin worked at Westinghouse as a drafting engineer, and he was going to get me in as a beginning draftsman. Or Warner Gear called me for production. Well, Warner Gear paid about $1 and something more on the hour, and I needed the money. Christmas coming, so hired in Warner Gear, and hired in on December the 13th, Friday the 13th, and worked there all through the winter, and I filled out for an application for an apprentice program. Well, in the meantime, Delco called me, wanted to know if I was still interested in an apprenticeship there, because I'd filled out for one there and never got it because of reasons of segregation and things at the time. But anyway, I told him, I said, well, whoever called me first, I'm going to take. So I got called there at Warner Gear in a tool room. And I also had bought a backhoe off of Uncle Clifton. And I thought, well, I'm going to work in the factory long enough till I get that backhoe busy enough to where I'm not going to work inside no more. But long story short, I stayed at Warner Gear for the next 30 years, hired in there because they laid off regular. I was laid off 1 week in 30 years, and I retired from there and worked as a tool maker while I was there. And half the time I worked on salary and half the time I worked hourly. How I got to be a tool maker at Warner Gear, I got to give you a little background on that first. I hired in there at Warner Gear on production, and I was working just grinding, out in the shop on production. And I filled out the application for a apprenticeship. And the guy I was working for, they come around, they wanted me to come to the tool room the next week or so. And this one guy said, well, you can't do that. You can't fill out for this other job. Well, you got this job. My real boss, he says, just let the kid alone, let him go. And so I went down and I put in for the apprenticeship, and I got it. And I served 4-year apprenticeship. I went to school Most of my schooling I took on correspondence classes. And I did do a little bit of trade school. Trade school would have been a lot easier because they graded on the curve and things. And on the correspondence classes, you either passed or flunked. And so I worked at it pretty hard. I made A's on everything but one thing I got a B on. And in the 3 years I was doing the correspondence school. But as an apprentice, I run the machines. And I'd have a tool maker that would show me what to do and how to do it and blah, blah, blah. And I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. There was many, many days that I almost couldn't wait to go back to work because, I enjoyed what I was doing. And
What is a tool maker?
at Warner Gear, the classification of a tool maker was on a machine, just like it has a production part on it. Anything that pertains to the tooling that cuts that part and the clamping and fixture that holds that part, that was toolmaker work to take care of that, to build that and maintain it. A machine repairman, on the other hand, took care of the machine and everything to the tooling, and then we took care of it. But we had, I forget how many thousand hours of this and that. I had to spend 8,000 hours, but 1,000 hours or more was to working out on the floor, on the shop floor, setting up machines, lining them up, and making them cut a good part. And I finished my apprenticeship in about 3.5 years, I think, about what it took me. And then I took a trip to Alaska that year and had some job offers up there. Probably should have took one of them and stayed, but I never, because my family was still in Muncie. So I come back to Warner Gear, and if you were a tool maker and you worked in the shop, you run a lathe, a mill, a grinder, or saw, or shaper or whatever, and you worked in tolerances. Our tolerances a lot of times was 1,500.
Sorry. Yeah, try to keep.
Yeah, we had tolerances of plus or minus 0.2 of a thousandth, and that's pretty thin because your hair is only like 4 or 5 thousandths is what your hair is. So 0.2 of 1,000th is pretty darn little. And but anyway, I always kind of enjoyed what I was doing, and I was pretty proud of what we done there. I went into supervision there and was on afternoon shift for a while. I had the worst situation that you could ever have as far as being a young supervisor, because I had a bunch of guys that hadn't had a boss for 6 or 8 months, and they knew what they was going to do and wasn't going to do, and so we fought an awful lot. But it was a good experience. And finally, I went back to work just being a tool maker, and a long time later, my boss, he come to me, wanted me to take another job as a boss over setting up this new area with area maintenance. I took that, and from then on, I stayed on supervision for quite a while, and I finally was over the tool room. Me and another guy I was his second in hand, and he was a top man, and he went back to work, so I become the general foreman in the tool room. Well, I had it for quite a while, and then I kind of got restless and thought I wanted to be an engineer. So I got after them, and they finally transferred me over to be an engineer. And I went in that engineering, and the first week, they wanted me to work Saturday and Sunday and no overtime. And I've been used to getting overtime for my Saturdays and Sundays. And so I didn't stick with that too long. I always enjoyed being a tool maker, and I had the privilege of going back. So finally, I just went back being a tool maker. And I had about 10 years to work or something like that. And so I bought these machines when I was a boss. They were CNC machines, they're computer-controlled machines, and I didn't know how to run them. So I sent guys to school, and they learned how to run them. Well, when I went back to work as a tool maker, I got the opportunity to learn how to run some of them machines, and they were really fun. It was really, really all right. And I went ahead and spent the next several years there until I got my time in where I could retire. And my son, Tommy, worked there for what, 10, 12 years?
19.
Almost 19 years. And, I got to visit with him when he was there and I was there and things. But I finally got to the point where I could retire, and I left that. And since I retired, we bought and fixed up some old houses and things like that, but I've not worked any jobs since I retired. And done good. We saved a little money, and I've done a lot of traveling, went through a divorce, and just a lot of things. And I was 57 years old when I retired, and I'm 82 now, and I still retired. So, and I've worked a lot, but I haven't worked for nobody because I didn't want to feel obligated to nothing, And we've done some things that's made some money, and Karen, that I'm married to now, we've worked together on some things that's made us some money, and she's worked hard, and we've done all right. Do I have children? Yes, I've got 2 fine sons, a couple great grandsons, and a couple great daughter-in-laws. And right now, Tommy, my oldest son, he's somebody I'm pretty proud of. And he has 2 sons, and he just retired. And so I'm looking forward to having some time to spend with him this summer. And my other son, Calvin, he lives out in California, and he was a recording engineer for NBC. And I think he's looking at retirement. I don't know how quick or anything, but he's done pretty good. He's married, no children. And I think this is his second wife, and Tommy's married to his second wife. And they all seem to be doing pretty good right now. And like I say, I'm proud of both of them. And I could count on them for about anything I needed to or wanted to. And excuse me. And I hope them grandsons continue to turn out just as well as they are right now.
Tell me about your marriages.
Okay, I was married to Karen Southard first. And I married to her for 27 years and really loved the woman. And I always thought there wasn't nothing. Nobody knew anything about love until you married for a few years, and you really kind of grew together and loved each other. Well, all of a sudden, after about 5 years, something changed. I don't know whether it was because I was out there in the woods too much or what, but it just seemed like after 5 years, it started going the other way. And anyway, we still had a lot of good times. And when we come home from Oregon, I thought I'd get a divorce at that time because we wasn't getting along worth nothing. But I got home and we worked it out, and we stayed together another 20 years. And I think through my negligence, I wasn't the easiest person to live with. I probably was pretty demanding of people around me. And she got to going out to her brothers, staying with her brothers, and they got to gambling. And I think she pretty much got addicted to the gambling. And I didn't realize how bad until in the last year or so we was married. There was a lot of things she didn't pay the bills. She took the money and gambled it. And so we just couldn't get along over a lot of things. And that just kind of was the tip of the iceberg. And I just didn't want to go through bankruptcy and all that, which, I feel guilty of it now because taking your vows, it's thick or thin, and health or sickness or health. And she really had a problem. And I think I feel a lot of times like maybe I deserted her. I don't know. And I hope she's forgiven me a little bit. I've forgiven her for some of the things she's done and said. And then I married this other little gal. And before I married her, I was single for 10 years. And I looked around a lot, played a lot, danced a lot, had a lot of fun. and worked a lot too. Worked a lot of overtime, and I made up my mind. I wanted somebody that fit the things that I decided I thought was important in life. And this little gal, I didn't want to get married, and she wasn't wanting to get married. But we got together, and she had so many traits that was pretty good traits and fit the things I thought I wanted, that I thought, well, I really need to kind of look at it, because I'd ready to just move on, stay single the rest of my life. I'd had everything pretty well set up that direction. And so wound up marrying her, and we've got along good and worked together good for the last almost 27 years, 26, I think it is, or something like that. And so that's been the story of my marriages. But like I said, I had done made up my mind in the past that if I stayed single the rest of my life, it wouldn't have bothered me. And I guess that's when the bug gets you.
Did you have another marriage in there somewhere?
Yeah, I forgot that. I don't hardly want to remember it, but I had a sweetheart from high school. I always kind of liked her, and she always thought she really liked me. And so we kind of got together there for a while. And, I chased her probably for a couple of years off and on, but she had an ex-husband. And this wasn't her first husband. This was one of her husbands, and she couldn't leave him alone.
This was after your first affair.
Yeah, this was after my first marriage, and I'd been single for, 6 or 8 years anyway. And she couldn't leave her ex-husband alone. And so finally, I just thought that wasn't worth that. We wasn't together. I married her with a stupid idea that maybe that would change things, but that don't seem to change things. Sometimes it makes it worse. But we stayed together probably for 3 months, and I just finally told her it wasn't going to work. So I went and got a divorce from her, and that's when I was single for quite a lot longer, and then I met this Karen here, and so far we've got along good. She's got a sister and a brother, and she was raised in Winchester, Indiana. And what's strange, my first wife was born here in Winchester too, but she inherited her mom and dad's place out here in the country. And so we've remodeled on it, and we've moved out here, and we sold my house up at Matthews. I forgot to tell you, I bought this old house at Matthews and put everything I had into it for several years, but I sold it. I'm kind of miss the river and things, but it's gone. I'm moving on now. So that's about all I can tell you, unless Tommy's got something else.
Okay. What are some of your life accomplishments?
Well, probably one of my biggest accomplishments was growing up healthy and then having 2 boys and getting them raised. Some of the accomplishments of my life that probably I don't take them as big accomplishments, but me and Jim rode our motorcycle to Alaskan back one time, which it wasn't like a pleasure trip. It was almost like climbing a mountain or something. It was a challenge, accomplishment. Another time, him and I went up there and stayed in the woods and hunted for a month and floated down a river up there for about 150 miles. And like I say, raised my boys and done a lot of hunting. And becoming the tool maker, I never really thought I'd live to be over 40. And here I am 80. That's a big accomplishment. And I've learned a lot of things. I learned a lot of things that when I was young I didn't learn. I was pretty lazy. Nobody encouraged me to learn. And like I say, I was dumb on the algebra and geometry and stuff. And once I learned that, and I learned it through the correspondence school, so I really had to get in there and learn it. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed doing that and learning that. And I've done a lot of things like that in my life that I really feel good about. And Yes, I've done some things I'm not very proud of in my life, but it goes on, and sometimes you can't turn it back. You just got to deal with what you got. So if I was going to leave some advice or words to the future generations, like my boys or the future generation, I just have to say one thing: is try to always be as honest as you can, and work hard, and don't judge people by how much they got. Judge people by who they are and what they are. And, don't even judge them, but accept them for what they are and who they are. Don't judge them. And I said one thing I always wanted to pass on too is if you judge the greatness of a nation, judge it by how well the poor live and not by how many millionaires you got. And I don't know. Just try to enjoy the days as you got them.